You ready?
Yeah. No, that's fine. Yep, I'm good when you are.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to today's stream of the Flesh and Blood Competitive Team League between the Hyperloops and Team Foundry. This is Andy Modell, and today I'm joined by Larry Johnson.
Hey, thanks for having me again, Andy. I'm very excited to see how this match plays out.
Yeah, thanks for joining me, Larry. Yeah, so over here on the right of our screen, we have Jonathan Magnuson. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. JMags, we call him. You might know him from top aiding the Calling Orlando with Oldhim, and today he is here on Oldhim.
Yeah, and JMag definitely is a very, very savvy Olden player. Going into a pretty tough matchup against Viscerai here.
Yeah, over on the right, I don't know him personally, but this is Jesse Valdez from Team Foundry, and he will be on Viscerai. Traditionally, Viscerai has a pretty decent matchup into Oldhim, from what I understand.
Yeah, that's definitely true. A lot of the Viscerais tend to go with one turn kill plan and really into any kind of Guardian. So what he's looking to do is just trying to block, maximize the amount of rune chance he can create, and have that one big go off turn.
Yeah, so the players just finalizing all of their equipment. They just did their die roll, and it looks like they're going to be getting started pretty soon. We got these jumbo oversized life counters today. Make it really easy for us here on the stream.
Yeah, no, it makes it super easy. We're definitely not missing the life totals in this one.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. Yeah, just some last minute sideboarding going on over on the Viscerai player. Now, as Oldhim into Viscerai, you know that Viscerai tries to do the OTK strategy. We saw in the Australian Nationals an attempt to try and block out his hand, or the Viscerai's hand, from an Oldhim that didn't work too well. If you were playing Oldhim into a Viscerai like this, what sort of strategy would you adopt?
Yeah, I think the Australian strategy of just trying to kind of advance the board state and not really perform a game action, it makes a lot of sense. It definitely it's kind of not allowing Viscerai to filter his hands and really force Viscerai into situations where he has to do something. Unfortunately, that's very draw dependent, and a savvy player can get around that. So I think in a situation like that, JMag is going to find himself with Oldhim. Is I think you're going to have to play the matchup a bit differently, and I think you're really going to have to push damage into Viscerai instead of kind of doing the traditional Oldhim gameplay and let them play into you. I think you have to be the aggressor in the matchup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes I've seen some Oldhims that try and be a lot more aggressive. I haven't seen them perform particularly well into the matchup myself, but I think Viscerai right now is just such a powerful character in the meta. And here the players are revealing their equipment. We've got pretty standard loadout on Oldhim. JMags pioneered the Fendel Spring Tunic Oldhim over in Orlando when everyone else was using Tectonic Plating. And we got Sutcliffe Suede Hides over on the Viscerai.
Yeah, we told JMag that he was patient zero of this Broken Crown of Seeds tunic combo. So we're gonna see how it performs in Oldhim. We know how it does in Starvo, so let's see if he can maximize that extra card throughout the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so turn one over here on the Oldhim side. The tunic ticked up, and it looks like JMag is carefully considering flipping a card over. Maybe that's going straight to Arsenal, or maybe he'll be playing something.
Yeah, and he goes right to Arsenal. I think this is generally normal opening play when you're going into Viscerai. You don't really want to let Viscerai filter their hand. You really want to make sure that they have to, have unoptimal attacks around optimal block lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here we see Viscerai. He's pitching, two of these strong attacks, not really planning on attacking right now, in order to start building up his rune chance with Spellblade Assault. That's 2 damage coming in, but more importantly, 2 rune chance generated.
Yeah, and I think that, as you can see, that what he's gonna be focused on is Viscerai. He's making sure that threat density is very high in his deck. So he's happy to throw 2 reds back, play a card that generates 2 rune chance, and and go to the next turn, and not and just slowly build up those rune chance for that one big Sonata turn.
Yeah, here we do see a Glacial Footsteps coming in, 9 damage and fused, so it does have Dominate. Dominate meaning that only 1 card will be coming out of Jesse's hand, but still 9 damage worth of pressure coming out is pretty strong this early in the game.
Yeah, and the Dominate is a very important thing, because what it does is it doesn't allow the Viscerai player to filter their hand. So they, normally Viscerai will be happy to throw 2 cards in front of it, in order to play a card and then draw up a new four. But by having that dominate, that could leave the Viscerite at times with cards stuck in his hand that's not really being able to fully utilize.
Yeah, and over here, this was a yellow Glacial Footsteps coming in, so seeing this yellow means that we're probably going to see quite a few more of those. You don't get the yellows unless you've also got the reds, and the blues are almost always included in the olden builds anyway.
Oh, for sure. This is definitely JMag knowing he's going into this matchup and he wants to really ensure that dominate. I'm sure he probably has a lot of on-hit effects that really can damage the arsenal. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this game develops.
Yeah, over here, we saw a really large pitch for Grasp the Arknight. Normally, you don't see that many resources pitched, but because Grasp requires an extra resource for every rune chant, and he already had 3 rune chants, he needed to send that second blue in there before that Read the Runes came in. Very interesting.
And for the Viscerai player, that may look like a weak turn, but that's functionally doing exactly what he wants to do. He's getting cards out of his hand, he's generating rune chants, and he's allowing himself to filter through his deck. So while it may have looked like a weak turn, I think that's playing right into the Viscerai game plan here.
Ooh, and over here, following the Tome of Harvest, we have a Fused Oaken Old. Definitely a fun card to see whenever we do. That gives it the Dominate, 9 damage, and the on-hit effect.
Which the on-hit effect, as people have seen in the Starva meta, is incredibly, incredibly strong. Viscerai does have access to his equipment here to block. It'll be interesting to see if he decides to full block it, or if he has a defense reaction and Arsenal to try to take care of it.
Yeah, and it looks like he does have that Read the Runes, defense reaction, or reduced to rune chant, I'm sorry. Defense reaction, it's free because he already has so many rune chants, and it gives him another one, all the value he wants.
Yeah, and that's a great turn to cover up that whole attack. He's able to play a defense reaction from Arsenal, still have a 3-card hand to be able to maybe pitch something to generate, and then have an Arsenal card set up for the next turn.
Yeah, we got Oath the Arknight here. Normally a setup for an attack, but also creating a rune chant with Go Again and enabling Viscerai's ability if he decides to play another non-attack, but he's not going to do that this turn.
Yeah, and the Viscerai player has 7 rune chants, so right now he's sitting at 34. So the Viscerai player definitely is in a bit of a commanding position in this game. But JMag definitely, we've seen some of his pitch cards too. Another Oaken Old coming down, so he definitely has a lot of hand hate, a lot of Arsenal hate. He's really trying to attack the Viscerai's kind of core game plan of keeping cards in hand and trying to set that Sonata.
Yeah, also, we got a Weave Earth that came in, and because the Oaken Old is fused, it's getting +4 from the Weave Earth. So instead of being 9 like normal, this is a 13 Dominate Go Again. Or sorry, not Go Again, 13 Dominate with the on-hit effect.
Yeah, and for the Viscerai player, this is exactly what you don't want to see. Back-to-back Oaken Olds. He's already bled a piece of equipment out of him, and this Oldhim player just buffed the Oaken Old so much that now the Viscerai player, you have to match. He's looking at a situation where he's going to put 2 cards on the bottom of his deck.
Yeah. 2 cards on the bottom, potentially 1 to block. Still gives him either 1 to pitch and then play the Arsenal, or if he's got something like a Read the Runes that come in free, exactly his normal game plan. Minus the life loss,
Exactly.
of course.
Yeah, the life loss is definitely it's definitely something to note. I mean, sitting at 34 is really nice. Taking 13 damage, that's going to feel a lot less like you're in control of the game. And really, Jesse's doing exactly what he needs to do with Oldhim. Have a lot of heavy pressure attacks, and depending on how his deck is constructed, it's likely we see disables. We've already seen Glacial Footsteps. So really, denying that the Viscerai player abilities to have the arsenal and have the hand, and also just keeping up that constant pressure.
Yeah, but it looks like Jesse is choosing not to block, basically taking all that damage and letting JMags randomly select 2 of these cards to go on the bottom.
Yeah, and definitely it could be one of those things too that just taking the damage and not blocking with anything, that at least it'll leave him with a 2-card hand. So if he's able to have the cards that he wants, so that he can play, then that may not be the worst thing in the world. I mean, it does kind of function in the situation that it lets him filter his hand still, but obviously that big damage hit is going to feel pretty bad.
Yeah, the last week I was playing an Armory event as a Viscerai against an Oldhim, and the Oaken Old was coming in. One of the cards in my hand was that Sonata Arcanix, and all I wanted to do was keep that, so I didn't block with anything, and the odds ended up being in my favor.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I imagine the Viscerai player did here. Just, if he has a couple cards in his hand that he just really wants to ensure that he can keep. And Rattlebones is a nice way. It's a way to get a non-attack action and see what he can do with it.
Yeah, Rattlebones brings an attack action, and here he's bringing the Spellblade Assault, which when he wants it will, or if he plays it this turn, will give him 2 rune chance. But I don't know if he will be playing it. It looks like that Rattlebones was just played to filter it out of the hand.
Sure. Yeah, and that definitely that tells me that the hand the cards Jesse threw back with that Oakenol definitely ended up being the ones he did not want to have in his hand still. So, but again, the Viscerai player just stick to the game plan. Played a card to filter his hand, draw a fresh 4, and he lives to see another day.
Yeah, we've got a Polar Blast over here with the potential of giving JMags next attack Dominate. It doesn't look like Jesse has played a resource there.
You could still be thinking about it. It definitely would be. I would be very concerned giving an Oakenold or giving an Olden player the ability to throw another dominated attack. So, I think at this point he really has to be considering like, is it worth paying that one resource? But then you run the situation like if he has a hand that he can really push a lot of rune chance with, it's a tough spot.
Yeah, the game is pretty early on still, but I don't think we've seen any attacks coming from the Olden player that don't have the ability to gain Dominate anyway. So we'll see if this actually makes a difference. Maybe it's instead of fusing, but right here it looks like Jesse is paying the resource now, dropping one of those Oath of the Nine-Bladed the Blood Oaths. And we'll see what JMags decides to follow this up with.
Polar Blast is showing to be such a strong card. Bleeds a card out of your opponent's hand. Is played from Arsenal, you draw a card. So it's effectively it can be free. Just very strong card.
Yeah, and here we do have a Command and Conquer, so if that had Dominate, that would have been much more imposing. But right now we've got still 2 cards out of hand. Oh, and the Yellow
Wow.
Pummel.
Yeah, that's exactly what you don't want to see as a Viscerai player. It's gonna hit his arsenal and it's gonna hit the card in hand. That's a very well timed pummel, and it is very devastating for the Viscerai player.
Yeah, so the Command and Conquer gets rid of the Arsenal on hit. The Pummel makes the player discard a card. So both of those Mordred Tides gone. Mordred Tide is such a powerful card for Viscerai.
Yeah, the Mordred Tide is really the bread and butter of the deck, and now the Viscerai player just has to draw up and pass back. Losing 2 Mordred Tides, it's a big hit, and especially from the one from Arsenal, kind of turning off one of those setup turns in the future.
Yeah, here we have 18 life and 7 rune chance against the Oldhim with 40 life. It's starting to feel like the tide is towards the Oldhim player, but Viscerai can still turn this around very quickly.
Oh, for sure. I've played against Viscerai enough never to count that hero out. You never know what kind of crazy turn they can have. But as the Oldhim player, you definitely have to feel comfortable seeing your opponent 18 life with only 7 rune chance generated. Viscerai players' hands just really aren't coming together, it seems like, and with the on hit kind of disruption that the Oldhim is throwing, it definitely makes the Viscerai it's putting him in really tough spots.
Yeah, so as the Viscerai player into an Oldhim, how many rune chants do you really want to see before you go off?
Generally speaking, the rule of thumb that I've always heard is that you want to have half the rune chance as what your opponent's life is. So if you follow that rule of thumb and you look at this matchup here, you're going to want to see at least 20 rune chance before you have your go off turn. Only having 7 at this point in the game, being at 18 life, that's got to be pretty concerning for the Viscerai feed here. So that same math.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's definitely concerning. Ooh, and we have a Channel Mount Lake Frigid here. This is a fun card. Does a lot of disruption. Not sure how disruptive it is unless Viscerai was planning to go off, but it can still make more expensive the stuff that they were planning on doing on their next turn.
Yeah, no, that is for sure. I mean, it does have in the early game it can have a drawback by allowing the Viscerai player to overpitch for cards to play. But in the late game, like we're getting to now, just being able to kind of turn off those turns and have at this point, if he does a block with something, having Channel Lake and a Frostbite tax, it could really hit the Viscerai. That oftentimes does draw all red hands.
Yeah, and here we see the Winter's Wail coming in. JMags pitched an Earth card for this, so it does not trigger the on-hit effect. And it looks like Jesse will be taking all 4 of those damage, not getting a Frostbite, but still down to 14 now.
Yeah, I almost have to wonder if that might have been a slight missequencing to not play the ice card with the Frost Hammer, but still, nonetheless, he presented 4 damage and was able to get 4 through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here we have Become the Arc Knight, Viserai's infamous tutor card. He'll be discarding a meet and greet, letting him search for a non-attack action.
And it's likely he might grab the Mordred Tide. Yeah, I thought he was either going to grab the Mordred Tide or the Sonata based on kind of what his hand was looking like.
Yeah, we got Mordred Tide number 3 coming in, Viserai's ability generating that rune chant, and then read the runes on top of the Mordred Tide, on top of Viserai is going to be 5 more rune chants. So in just that one turn, Jesse went from 7 rune chants up to 14.
Yeah, and that's a great turn for Jesse in the sense that he definitely feels like his back against the wall. One thing we've not seen is we have not seen a Sonata yet. Be it a card he's pitched or a card he's banished. So it's definitely likely that one of these cards are going to have a Sonata coming up pretty soon. That's going to make or break the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, looks like almost forgot to shuffle after that search, but managed to do that, redraw his hand, and we have another Tome of the Harvest. Tome of the Harvest's a card that I feel like we didn't see too much in the Starvo meta. Oldham's still running it over here, giving him 3 cards in exchange for the Arsenal. I do like the theme that Earth has about trading a card in Arsenal for a card in hand. I think Tome of the Harvest really emphasizing that, as well as the Crown of Seeds, which lets you do it basically every turn.
Yeah, Tome of Harvest is definitely one of the unsung cards, and it's definitely been overshadowed in the Bravo meta with people really focusing on the Crown of Seeds Tunic combo. But Tome of Harvest is a really great card that I imagine we're going to see a lot of moving in the future.
Yeah, here we have the 3rd Oakenold fused, so that's 9 Dominate with the on-hit effect. And I think JMags actually, in his initial Starvo lists during the ProQuest season, he was playing the Channel Mount Heroic Starvo, he was playing the Earthlore Bounty, and he was playing the Tome of Harvest. One of his friends using his list ended up winning a ProQuest with it, though I don't think the list ended up doing too well overall in the scene, though I am told that JMags did beat Brendan Patrick with it during the calling at Indianapolis.
Yeah, and obviously Brendan is one of the premier players of Flesh and Blood, so to be able to get a win on him is definitely a good thing.
Yeah, here we see a single block with the Spellblade Assault. Looks like we're not having equipment in front of this Oakenold.
Yeah, and I think that kind of would, I imagine that would signal to the Oldham player that the Viserai player is kind of in a spot where he's just trying to hold his, trying to stay alive.
Yeah, that's going to be 6 damage going through, 14 down to 8, and all but one of those cards going to the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, choosing to roll those dice in Tabletop Simulator just takes a bit longer than rolling them in real life. It's interesting how rhythmic almost it goes up and then back down.
A lot of times when I'm waiting for games to start, I'll just click the reroll button and just watch it bounce on the table.
Mm-hmm. All right, going over now to Jesse on the Viserai player, 1 card in hand. Looks like he's...
So with Jesse, you have to imagine, if it's not a Sonata, he's probably just going to Arsenal and pass right back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've got 8 life and 14 rune chants on Jesse with Viserai against 40 life and 5 cards with JMags on Oldham. Ooh, over here we have a Macho Grande. This is one of the new cards from Everfest. Very popular in the Oldham Blitz games. I haven't seen it much in Classic Constructed, but this is just a blue card, 8 damage, Dominate.
Yeah, and that definitely does the job. Again, not as popular in the Showstopper decks, but I mean, just the ability to have a card with Tactile and Dominate is very strong.
Yeah, it looks like, okay, yep, Jesse got the second dice to indicate on his Grasp the Arcanite there. Up to 15 rune chants, thanks to reduce the rune chant. Drawing up a card with Gorg Tome.
Yeah, and at this point, you have to imagine that it's highly likely there's a Sonata in Oldham's future here.
Yeah, the question...
A lot of times, Viserai players, from what I've seen, they will try to prevent blocking with the Scalata until at such point they're ready to go. Just in the event the Guardian player has a Mangle or something like that, they could kind of blow them out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have seen a few of at least the Starvo lists running Expose the Elements into Viserai. Oldham has all the cards he needs to fuse for that as well if he wants to try and get rid of the equipment. Getting rid of Skeletor pretty much completely stopping the OTK combo effect. But I don't know if JMags is going to be rocking that or not.
Well, with the amount of disruption and hate that we've seen him for this specific matchup, I think it's probably highly likely that he might be running at least one copy of it in this deck. Haven't seen it pitched yet, but just by the way that the deck seems to be constructed, he might very well have the access to that if he's able to find it in time.
Yeah, and as the Oldhim player, you don't always have to reveal everything in your deck. If you want to hide something, you just stick it in your arsenal and Crown of Seeds it straight to the bottom. The opponent never gets to see what it is. I've definitely played some games where you hide the pummels until they become lethal or super effective, and if he's doing something with Expose the Elements, this is a great way for him to do that too.
Mm.
Yeah, here we have a
lead. See this right here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's a lead the charge. It's a second non-attack action, which normally you would expect to see the Rune Chant, but because it's not a Runeblade card, it wasn't generating that. We do have here an attack, though, in the form of a Shrill the Skull form, this taking up all of those Rune Chants coming out. And because they're popping right now, it looks like we are not going to see them going against the cost of a Sonata Arcanix.
Yeah, that's a fascinating situation. I mean, to be in this point with Viscera, I imagine he's very concerned he's just not going to be able to get that extra card he needs. Kind of sacrificing his go-off turn to try to just push some raw damage at this point. He does have an extra action point, which is relevant. We don't know what the other card in his hand is, but still coming, for a respectable 15 damage. And with the Skull form is turned on because he made a Rune Chant, so it's likely that a lot of damage is going to get through here.
Yeah, and we don't even have, he's not using the Spellbound Creepers, so there's not anything funky going on with him instant speeding in a Sonata before those Rune Chants go off. They just hit damage, bringing JMags down from 40 to 28, and the Shrill the Skull form is going to be blocked fully by the Pummel and the Mulch.
Yeah, and again, another piece of tech that we see from JMags with the Mulch. Like, Mulch is devastating into Viscera. If you have the ability to fuse it and be able to hit that Arsenal card with just an on-hit, not a crush effect like normal Guardian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now we just see Rosetta Thorn, one of the most powerful equipments, 1 resource, 4 damage, plus that last Rune Chant coming in.
It looks like JMag just elects to take that, and then he's definitely in where he's at in the position right now. He definitely is probably feeling he's pretty strong in the sense that the Runeblade player has 0 Rune Chants, and he has 8 life, and he's able just to throw a hammer at him and push 4 damage and really put the Viscera on the back foot.
Yeah, while Rosetta Thorn is powerful, run resource for 4, you can't do it unless you have other cards to back it up, the attack, the non-attack. Winter's Wail being just 1 card to pitch. If it's a blue card, you're good, 4 damage. It's very powerful, something you can do turn after turn with low cards. 1 card for the hammer, 1 card in arsenal, and 2 cards to block plus the Crown of Seeds. It's a powerful combination that lets Oldhim really lengthen games without while still presenting decent pressure.
I mean, and we can see that even with the way JMags has his pickler was constructed, there's a lot of pressure. So I mean, normally the Oldhim player, the Oldhim list generally people see are the ones where he's very happy to sit back, activate his defense reactions and just play the long game. But here, JMag is really pushing damage with pummels, a lot of dominated attacks. So definitely an aggressive take on Oldhim. It seems to be doing pretty well into this Runeblade.
Yeah. While we're waiting for Jesse to figure out how to block, I just want to thank all of our viewers right now. We have 10 concurrent viewers. I think that's a most for this channel at this time. So please like the video, subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it. Every viewer counts, and we thank you very much for watching. All right, here we have a double block going on. Amplify and Dread Triptych. Those are just preventing all the damage, leaving Jesse with 2 cards in hand and the 1 in arsenal.
It's definitely worth noting that, even though it seems as if the Runeblade player is like on the back foot, he can easily piece together another turn. We haven't seen any of the Sonatas yet. So, I mean, even if he, with the Runeblade player at 20, or with the Oldhim player at 23, even if you follow that same math, if he's able to do a Sonata and have 10 Rune Chants, then that could very well present lethal out of nowhere.
Yeah, the amount of damage that a Viscera can dish out in 1 turn with a good hand, even without a bunch of rune chants, is just crazy. This is why we saw him acing the blitz meta so much, because he could get lethal really fast. We saw in Krakow Yuanji from the Hyperloops running Viserai getting a turn 2 win in the finals right there, just because of the amount of damage he could dish out. Over here we have a Fused Mulch, which, like Command and Conquer, does threaten the arsenal on hit, fusing with this Pulse of Eisenloft.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody had the chance to see how strong Viserai was in that calling matchup, I mean, basically it's the same exact hero in CC. He does the exact same thing. Just the ability to be able to fire off 20 plus damage with minimal setup. It can happen. So you never really can rest on your laurels when you're playing against Viserai.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 8 damage here. This is technically lethal if there are no blocks coming in from Jesse, and you have to block all 8 to keep that card in the arsenal.
And one thing Jesse could be really concerned about is we've seen a lot of pummels out of Jesse playing Oldhim. So Viserai could be really doing the pummel math, and it could force him into a situation where he might overblock. And Jesse does have 2 cards in hand, so that is definitely threatening a pummel.
Yeah, earlier we saw a yellow pummel get the Command and Conquer over. We have red pummel visible on top of the graveyard, so we know that's probably at least 6 in JMags' deck. I think we saw him block with 1 more, so decent likelihood that blocking 8 will not keep that arsenal safe.
Yeah, and Oldhim plays very much like Starvo in the sense that, you filter, you can run through your deck so quickly with the Crown of Seeds, and we've seen Tone of Harvest played. So yeah, Jesse just makes the conservative play and just blocks everything.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. Normally you would think as your arsenal is a safe place, maybe Command and Conquer is the only damage, but here we've seen multiple mulches, Command and Conquer. The arsenal is now as dangerous place to put a card as keeping it in your hand.
For sure. And I think the one thing about the arsenal is like all these cards are specifically targeted for the arsenal.
Yeah, here we have a red Glacial Footsteps coming in and fused, so that's 10 with Dominate. Dominate definitely being a way to get damage through, especially when the opponent is at such low life like this. That 10 damage is going to be serious.
That is going to be, and he does have 3 block left on his equipment. So it's if he blocks with a 3 block and his equipment, then he will survive. But he's definitely not in a strong position here. And again, Jesse's still having that threat of having a pummel with the card in arsenal and the card in hand. And we know the card in hand is a 3 pitch too.
Yeah, though there are no resources floating right now, so it would have to be everything. And usually, unless it is going to be game ending, the Oldhim player does like to keep a card in arsenal. Though a pummel getting a card out of hand with this card effect would probably be worth getting that out of the arsenal. Crown of Seas just being so powerful. Mm-hmm. Yep, and as you predicted, we are seeing a lot of that equipment. Jesse choosing to keep Bloodsheath Skeleta just in case he wants to use it, but we do have that pummel.
Yeah, and that's going to close it up, I believe. That is big pummel.
14 coming in against what is that? 4, 5, 6 block. So that's going to be exactly lethal.
He finally found the Sonata. That's really unfortunate for the Runebait player, but Jesse with showing the Oldhim with a lot of disruption can really get there against Viserai.
Yeah, so that's JMags from the Hyperloops winning against Jesse from Team Foundry. This makes the standings in this week 2-0 for the Hyperloops. We have 2 games on Friday, probably not going to be streamed, and then Cody Williams will be playing on Sunday to finish out the week. I'm Andy Modell. Thank you all for watching. Joined today by Larry Johnson.
Yep, thank you again for having me, Andy. It was great to watch an exciting game.
Yeah, and thanks all of you to our viewers. Hopefully we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.